Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. In this video, I'm going to be unboxing, doing a little disassembly and examination of, and doing first runs of a car that I just picked up off Banggood. It's another, $100 price range kind of car. In fact, it's less. It's $85 with one battery. Has two different body styles. It's the SG-1604. It's a ready-to-run 1/16th scale all-wheel drive on-road car and drift car. This is what it looks like, this particular model. One model looks like a notchback 60s Mustang that's had the roof and roof pillars cut off of it, a roll cage put on, and a flat top. And the other model looks like a truck, basically a pickup truck. It's low and flared just like this one. They both look neat. I liked this one a little more, and that's what I decided to go with. They're both the same price, identical running gear. This is the 1604, the other is the 1603. They both come with a 2.4 megahertz radio. They even have a receiver that has a gyro, which is going to be interesting to play with. Never driven a car with a gyro. It comes with two sets of tires. You get a set of wheels with road tires mounted, and you get a set of wheels with drift tires mounted. Now, I've never been into drifting RC cars, never tried, so this is going to be fun for me and new and interesting. Got a little tennis court across the street where that should be a really nice surface for doing a little drifting, so we'll see how it goes. It uses a fairly small battery, comes with it. I forget how many milliamps it is, but I'll have all that information for you during the unboxing and looking over the car. This is another one of those cars. It's a great way to get your foot into the hobby. And there's another one coming down the road after that. It's on pre-order. I'm just kind of teasing you with it for the moment. So we'll cover that later. But it's the first of the WL Toys car to actually be a proper race scale vehicle. It's a 1/10th scale off-road buggy. And that's really nice because there aren't any racing venues for these other cars, at least none that are official. And I'd like to see more of that. I'd really like to see the hobby kind of open its doors to the young racers who just don't have the budget for, the higher end cars where you've got to have a full kit, and you got to buy the motor and the ESC and everything else separately. These cars aren't the most reliable, these ready-to-runs. They're built with a lot of cheap parts, but to get a complete package in the sub $200 range is just unheard of. And if there were classes allowed, for these cars where modifications weren't allowed, you had to run the car as it comes out of the box, I think that would bring a lot more people into the hobby. And the fact that now one of them is in a proper scale, the 1/10th scale four-wheel drive buggy class is a very popular racing class these days. And if there was a separate version of that class only open to those inexpensive cars and no modifications were allowed, that would give people on a real budget a chance to get a taste for the hobby, to do a little bit of racing and do it on a truly level playing field. My experience has been anytime classes of that sort are opened, like the Euro truck racing class, they are very, very popular even with the experienced racers because it's so inexpensive that they don't mind throwing down a few dollars and getting another kit and running another class because it's one more car they can drive. And when the price point is that low, almost everybody in the club seems to pick one up and give it a try just for kicks. There's a lot of talk about the hobby dying. That's been going on for decades. Almost as long as I've been in the hobby, it's always been a few years away from going out of existence. the main way to keep it going is keep new blood coming into the hobby, and the best way to do that is bring that price point of entry down to something where people can at least get a start. It's not going to be where they stay, but at least it gets them in the door and gets them active. So just my thoughts on that subject. Sorry to kind of, go off on a tangent there, but it is important. And if you're into the hobby and you're into racing, this should be something that concerns you, because as things slow down and the hobby loses interest, the tracks go away, and then you've got a shelf full of cars and nowhere to race them, and that's no fun. So anyway, let's have a look in the box. Okay, let's check it out. Here we have our operating instructions. Let's see if they give us any looks at what's inside. Looks like we got some at least decent directions on the radio setup and the gyro. And we do have some exploded views on the diffs and suspension assemblies, shocks, servo. Not very detailed. We got spare parts lists. So that's a big improvement on some of these cars, having that much information. Our radio, and we need to cut some little zip ties here on the bottom. Feels pretty solid. Plastic chassis. Was hoping for aluminum, but no big deal. If it's solid enough, that's fine. Okay, we got some like fringy plastic here. This is just the body cover, the clear paint protection for when the body's being painted. Looks like they put it on over this nose piece, so there may be some issues getting this all off. But we'll deal with that section at a time. Might as well get these pins. I'm kind of jumping the gun. And we have some headlights, which are controllable from the radio. This looks like the kind of car that Ken Block or Pastrana or someone of that level would want to drive and race. I'm probably going to need to take those 5-6 screws off to really be able to remove this plastic properly. Let's see if yeah, it looks like we can take out 4 screws and pull the nose piece off as well. So that's something we'll need to do along the way. And this light is plugged in independently, so if you don't want your lights you don't need to use them. There's a headlight plug and a taillight plug. There are no taillights on this particular kit though. So we got a nice little layout here. You know, servo speed control receiver combo, which is typical of many of these kits. You know, 2 wires, says we definitely have a brushed motor. No surprise, knew that was coming. Feels kind of stiff. Usually you can rotate drive gear a little more easily than that. We don't have any turnbuckles. It's going to be interesting to see how much range of motion we actually have up front here, because if you're familiar with drift cars, you know that they are, you know, true drift cars are set up with a tremendous amount of steering angle, and that requires kind of atypical suspension components from what you would normally have with an on-road race car. But that doesn't mean you can't drift with it. It just means that you can't do as much or go as far. Here's our little extra stuff. There's nothing else in here. We get a, I believe it's a USB type charger. And we have our nice hard plastic drift tires. They are literally hard plastic. I don't think that's even a rubber compound there. We have a small assortment of tools. Looks like we have an extra pair of turnbuckles. I wonder if there's a specific reason for these. I don't know if they're the exact size as the other ones. Maybe that's an item that can break and they gave you a couple of spares, or maybe that's something for the drift car setup. I don't know. Let's kind of have a look-see here and see if they're the same size. They do appear to be identical in length, so they're just spares. That's interesting that they would give us spares just for that. Now, you know, me being the kind of car guy I am that loves modding things, that is something I would love to change. I would love to put adjustable turnbuckles on so I can tune the front end suspension. But as you can see, the wheels look like they're almost dead on straight, maybe like a degree of toe in. So it may not even be an issue. If the angle is straight and it's solid, then making changes to that are not really necessary. We don't seem to have any other adjustments. We've got a solid upper and lower A-arms, so that means we can't adjust our camber because we don't have adjustable camber links. And toe is set, so the suspension on the car is locked. There's no tuning that can be done. These shocks are not oil filled. They're just a friction damped spring shock. So we're going to get a little bit of a bouncy ride. You know, it's because there's nothing to damp those springs, but not necessarily a problem for a car this size. You know, and for $85, anything that comes complete and ready to run, where all you need to do is put some batteries in your transmitter and charge up your drive battery. Wow, that really took work there. Yep, typical 4 batteries. I mean, that sounded atrocious, but it doesn't seem to have broken anything. It's a very stiff latch. Wow. I might have to like sand that down a little bit or something. Okay, let's see. We have the ESP Plus. That's our gyro, and you can basically turn up or down its intensity, its effectiveness. Steering trim, and not sure what that is, but I'll look that up for you. we have throttle reverse and steering reverse. I don't know why they put those on a radio like this, because, you know, they designed it, so, you know, you're not going to change your steering from left and right to right and left. So I don't know why they bother with those switches. I'd rather them put in an exponential so you can adjust how much steering influence you have, you know, or the ability to adjust how quickly it comes on. Nothing fancy about the charger, just plug it into a USB port and let it go until the light changes color. And we get one battery. It's not very large. From the looks of it, I'd say it's probably about 15 or 1600 milliamps, maybe a little more. It's not a LiPo, it's a lithium ion, and it's 1200 milliamps. So yeah, not a big boy, but I mean, on a car this small with this amount of space, you know, this is not a car that I would modify. The only thing I would potentially do to a vehicle like this would be to swap out the speed controller for a standalone and put in a receiver so that I can use my personal radio. I'd have to look at the motor type, but I've actually got a couple of small motors and speed controls right here. It's a 18 amp easy run hobby wing and a 2435 brushless motor. It's 4500 kV, suitable for 1/16 and 1/18 scale vehicles, which this is. So I actually had intended this for another project when I bought it, which I have not yet done anything about. So this might be something I toss in here down the road, but I'm going to start by just running it as it is, because I think it's going to be just fine. I might pick up a second battery at some point. They weren't available at the time I ordered this, and there wasn't multiple kit options where they like stack a couple extra batteries in it for you. I do like having extra batteries because I don't like, you know, immediately charging a hot battery that's just been discharged. I like having a couple of batteries so I can, you know, switch one, then another, and, you know, give that first one time to cool down and then time to get a proper charge. You know, also that way, if I'm just going out to do, you know, to have some fun, I can charge all three in advance, run all three batteries down, and then, you know, head in. And, you know, have a little bit more drive time than just a single battery, but yeah, it is what it is. We'll deal with that for now. But it's awfully tall. There's a lot of ground clearance. I don't have anything handy to give you a measurement on that, but I mean, like, I can slide that screwdriver right in there and have room underneath. Let's see. We're about 3/4 of an inch off the ground. Yeah. Front and rear about 3/4 of an inch. I think for drifting, it would probably be nice to be able to lower this down a little bit so it's not going to be prone to rolling over. Same thing with driving it as a regular on-road car. A little bit of, because it's also at the top of the springs. You know, the suspension's right at the top. There's no droop in the suspension, and ideally it's good to have a little droop in your suspension so that the car has somewhere to go upwards. You know, the car should kind of float on the suspension, unless you're talking, you know, ridiculous race car, so that, you know, when there's a bump that is a depression, the tire has somewhere to go to, as opposed to just hanging in the air almost, not having anywhere to react. Whereas when you hit a bump, it can, you know, make the wheel move up on the suspension. But if it's, you know, a depression and the car's already running at the top of its suspension, there's nowhere for that tire to drop into. It can't, you know, it can't respond. So might want to tinker with that at some point. Looks like we've got, you know, the cheap type of preload adjusters that are just a little plastic ring that you just pop out like that. And that lets the spring come up a bit. That takes a little bit out. Let's try that on both of these and see what we get. So that immediately lowered our front end and gave us a little bit of droop. There's not, it's really sticky. You know, and again, it's an $85 car, you know, what do you want? I'm not gonna be heavily critical of things that I don't think are proper, because it's amazing that they can put these cars together at this price point anyway and have them be as good as they are. So that's something you can do right there, is pull those preload adjusters out. And it looks like it's only the two. We didn't get as much of a change in the rear as we got in the front, which leads me to believe that, you know, we've got a lot of stiction up here, and not as much in the rear. Because see, look at that, I pushed it and it stays down. I lift it, it comes up, push it down, and it stays down. So I'm gonna have to do a little disassembly here and figure out which of these joints on the control arms are sticking and preventing the suspension from moving in a fluid way. That is definitely something I've seen in a lot of these kits. Well, they're not kits, in these ready-to-run vehicles, is that there is a low level of attention paid to details during assembly. And again, I'm not going to make that a harsh criticism, because to produce a vehicle like this at $85 and have everything be perfect is simply not feasible. You know, the people putting these things together can't spend 6 hours doing it. They've got to, you know, snap, 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 get things done. That's interesting. The drive shaft looks like it's a hexagon shaped rod. As opposed to a round bar. It almost looks like it's steel instead of aluminum. Again, I think I'm going to do a little disassembly on this and kind of go over things, see if I can't just do a reassembly with you know, a little more attention to detail, and hopefully make the car a little more refined. I really don't want to drive it like this with the front end this stuck. I can leave out the rear suspension adjusters, but I definitely need to put the fronts back in if I'm going to just go take this for a run, because it is not going to drive well with the front end that low, that stuck. I wish they gave us a couple extras in different sizes, you know, a couple of that are half the size of these, so we had some adjustment to do. But you know, and that's the kind of thing that would cost nothing from their point of view, literally a fraction of a cent. You know, these things cost them virtually nothing to manufacture. It probably costs them more to have someone cut them out of the parts tree from a mold than it does to actually pour the plastic. You know, I'm not the one designing it and running the company, so I have no control over that. But you know, I don't really have a problem with the chassis being made of plastic. This seems like a very hard type of plastic. It looks like it's got a bit of fiber molded into the plastic. A lot of plastic these days, especially for the hobby, border on composite. for example, if you are familiar with 3D printing, there are PLA, basically the plastic spool that has 20 to 30% carbon fiber mixed into the plastic, so you get a stiffer, stronger plastic out of the print. Things like that. X-Ray is a manufacturer that has spent a tremendous amount of R&D time developing different grades of plastic. And if you just look at like the plastic here and here compared to this chassis pan is a very rigid plastic, almost going to the point where you would think it might be brittle. I don't think it is, because like I said, I think this is a more of a composite plastic. It's just got that look like there's, you know, like there's small amounts of fiber mixed into the plastic itself before it's poured into the mold. But yeah, no issue with it not being metal. If it's that kind of sturdy plastic, there's doesn't seem to be much in the way of flex, and that's, you know, I am not a 1/16 scale person flexing this chassis. That's not a lot of flex, and a little bit of chassis flex can be a good thing depending on what it does and how it is. But I have no criticism of the plastic being used for that. So okay, I'm gonna just kind of leave it right here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unscrew the roll cage here and the lights. I'm gonna clean up this plastic. I'm gonna get a charge on this battery, and I'm gonna take it out with just the street tires to start and run a battery through and see how it feels. You know, tinker with the gyro settings a little bit for you. I'll probably put the little speedo on this and get you a speed test. I'm sure it's not going to be anything impressive at 1/16 scale. You know, if it goes over 20-25 miles an hour, it's a rocket. So I mean, all you got to do is do the math on that scale, and it's going plenty fast. So we'll see what it's like. You know, and once I've run a battery through it, I'll move on to another video where I start doing disassembly. So the next video, I'll start the teardown and seeing what's what. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.